Rowan, did you pack the extra sunscreen? My skin is so sensitive. That was Chloe, of course, sprawled across the back seat like a spoiled cat, scrolling through her phone. Yes, Chloe, it's in the blue bag, under the snacks, I replied, my voice even. I glanced in the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of her rolling her eyes. Standard. Rowan, can you grab my water bottle? It's like super important to stay hydrated. Mark, my ex-boyfriend, drawled from the passenger seat, not even bothering to turn around. Sure, Mark, I sighed, reaching into the cooler I'd meticulously packed earlier. Water bottle, check. Snacks, check. First aid kit, check. Map, check. Itinerary, meticulously planned and color-coded, check. I was the designated packer, planner, driver, and general caretaker of this whole ridiculous cross-country road trip. It was always like this. I was the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who made sure everyone else had a good time, the one they took for granted. Rowan, are we there yet? This time it was my younger sister, Lisa, whining from behind Chloe. At least she had the decency to sound slightly apologetic. Almost, Lisa. We'll stop for gas and a bathroom break in about 20 minutes, I said, checking the GPS. I'd already calculated the optimal stopping points, factoring in gas prices, restroom cleanliness, as best I could from online reviews, and proximity to scenic overlooks, because that's what I did. The conversation drifted around me. Chloe complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi, Mark bragging about his latest conquest, Lisa giggling at something on her phone. I tuned them out, focusing on the road. It wasn't that I didn't like them, exactly. It was just exhausting. Always being the one who had to think of everything, anticipate everyone's needs, smooth over every little problem. Finally, the flickering neon sign of a gas station appeared in the distance. Last stop for 50 miles, it proclaimed, ominous in the gathering dusk. It looked desolate, the kind of place you'd see in a horror movie. Ugh, this place looks creepy. Chloe wrinkled her nose. Can't we wait until we find somewhere nicer? We're almost out of gas, Chloe, I pointed out, pulling up to a pump. And Lisa needs the bathroom. Fine, but make it quick, she said, already back on her phone. I got out, stretching my stiff limbs. I'll just grab some coffee and snacks, I told them. Anyone need anything? Silence. They were all engrossed in their devices, figures. Inside, the gas station was even more depressing. Dusty shelves, flickering fluorescent lights, and a single bored-looking cashier behind a thick layer of bulletproof glass. Just this, I said, placing a coffee and a bag of chips on the counter. The cashier, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read Brenda, barely glanced at me. That'll be $4.50, she mumbled, her voice flat and devoid of any emotion. I paid, grabbed my things, and headed back out. And that's when I saw it, or rather didn't see it. My car, was gone. My heart stuttered. I looked around, blinking, thinking maybe I'd parked somewhere else. Maybe I was just disoriented, but no. The spot where I'd left my meticulously packed, carefully maintained SUV was empty. This isn't funny, guys, I called out, my voice cracking slightly. I expected them to pop out from behind the building, laughing, shouting, "Surprise!" It was exactly the kind of stupid prank they'd pull, but nothing. Only the hum of the gas pumps and the distant howl of the wind. I pulled out my phone, no signal, 1 bar, battery, 5%. Damn it, I muttered, frantically trying to call Mark. No answer. Chloe, no answer. Lisa, straight to voicemail. My hands started to shake. This wasn't a joke. This was something else. I tried my mom. She didn't pick up. I tried my dad. He didn't pick up. Panic began to set. I looked back at the gas station, at Brenda staring blankly out the window. She hadn't seen anything, or if she had, she didn't care. I was alone, stranded, in the middle of nowhere. And the awful, chilling truth began to sink in. They'd left me. On purpose. Brenda, the cashier, was about as helpful as a brick wall. "Did you see a blue SUV leave here a few minutes ago?" I asked, trying to keep my voice from trembling. She blinked at me, slowly, like I was speaking a foreign language. "Lots of cars leave here," she said, her voice monotone. "It's a gas station." "Yes, but this one, it had my friends in it, my family. They left without me." She shrugged, a barely perceptible movement of her shoulders. "Not my problem." Can I use your phone? I pleaded. Mine's about to die and I have no signal. She pointed to a payphone bolted to the wall outside. 50 cents. Of course. I fumbled in my pockets, finding only a few crumpled bills and some loose change. Not enough. My wallet was in the car, along with everything else. Please, I said, my voice cracking. It's an emergency. Brenda just stared at me, her expression unchanging. 50 cents, she repeated. Defeated, I turned and walked outside. The wind had picked up, whipping my hair around my face. Dark clouds were gathering overhead, promising a storm. I looked down the long, empty highway, the direction they'd driven off in. Nothing. Just the endless black asphalt disappearing into the night. A wave of despair washed over me. They weren't coming back. They'd really left me. The first fat raindrops began to fall. I had to do something. I couldn't just stand here. The next town, according to the sign, was about 10 miles away. It was a long shot, but it was my only option. I started walking, hugging myself against the cold. The rain quickly intensified, soaking me to the bone. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and lightning flashed, illuminating the desolate landscape. The road was dark, uneven, and bordered by a steep embankment. I stumbled, my foot catching on a loose piece of gravel. I tried to regain my balance, but it was too late. I tumbled down the ravine, a scream tearing from my throat. The world spun, a blur of rocks, dirt, and pain. I landed hard, a sharp, agonizing pain shooting through my leg. I lay there, gasping for breath, the rain pounding down on me. I tried to move, but a searing pain shot through my leg. I was trapped. As the cold seeped into my bones and the blood soaked into the muddy ground, a strange clarity washed over me. They'd never really cared. I was just convenient. Someone to take care of things, to make their lives easier. They'd used me and then they'd discarded me like I was nothing. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Well, they'd gotten their wish. I was gone. And this time, I wouldn't be crawling back begging for their forgiveness. This time, they'd be the ones begging. If I ever get another chance, I whispered to the storm, the words ripped from my throat. I won't chase you. I'll make you chase me. Darkness closed in. My eyes snapped open. Sunlight streamed through a window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I was in my bed? In my old apartment? Confusion swirled in my head. The last thing I remembered was the fall, the pain, the cold. This wasn't right. This room, it was familiar, yet different. It was my room from a year ago, before the move, before everything. I sat up, my heart pounding, my leg. It didn't hurt. I looked down, expecting to see a bloody mess, but my skin was smooth, unbroken. I scrambled out of bed, my movements clumsy, disoriented. I stumbled to the dresser, grabbing my phone. The old phone, the one I'd replaced months ago. I turned it on, my hands shaking. The date flashed on the screen. 1 year, exactly 1 year before the gas station. My breath hitched. This couldn't be real. It was a dream, a hallucination, a what? I didn't know, but it felt real. I rushed to the mirror, staring at my reflection. It was me, but younger, less tired, less, broken. The lines of worry and exhaustion that had etched themselves onto my face over the past year were gone. I touched my face, my fingers tracing the smooth curve of my cheek. It was real. I was back. I checked my bank account online, using my old laptop. The balance was exactly what it had been a year ago. I scrolled through my social media, seeing posts from a year past, messages from friends and family, all blissfully unaware of what was to come. Or what had been to come. It was like hitting the reset button on my life. A second chance. A chance to do what? The initial shock gave way to a surge of something. Relief, yes, but also anger. A cold, hard fury that settled in my gut. They'd left me. They'd laughed and driven away, leaving me stranded, injured, alone, and now I had a chance to change things, to rewrite the ending. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my mind racing. I couldn't just go back to living my old life, knowing what they were capable of. I couldn't just pretend it hadn't happened. No. This time, I wouldn't be the victim. This time, I wouldn't be the one left behind. This time, I'd be in control. They thought they could discard me. They thought I was disposable. They had no idea what was coming. A slow, chilling smile spread across my face. This wasn't just a second chance. This was a chance for revenge. A quiet, subtle, devastating revenge. A revenge where they wouldn't even know what hit them until it was far too late. This time I would disappear, and they would never recover. The first few days were surreal. It was like stepping back into a play I'd already performed, knowing all the lines, all the cues, all the inevitable betrayals. I went through the motions, playing the role of old Rowan, the quiet, accommodating, endlessly helpful Rowan. "Rowan, can you pick up my dry cleaning?" my mom asked, barely looking up from her phone. "And grab some milk while you're out. Oh, and don't forget the cat food. The expensive kind. Fluffy only eats the salmon pate." "Oh, sure, Mom," I replied, my voice even. The old Rowan would have sighed, maybe mumbled something about having a lot to do, but she would have done it, and so did I. But inside, a cold detachment was growing. I was an observer now, watching these people, my family, with a newfound clarity. Later that week, it was Chloe's turn. "Rowan, be a doll and help me organize my closet," she said, gesturing to a mountain of clothes spilling onto her bedroom floor. "I have, nothing to wear to Sarah's party." "Of course, Chloe," I said, forcing a smile. I spent hours sorting through her designer clothes, her overflowing shoe collection, her piles of unworn jewelry. The sheer excess of it was nauseating. "You're so good at this, Rowan," Chloe said, admiring her newly organized closet. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You'll find out soon enough," I thought, the words a silent promise. My internal monologue had become a constant, running commentary. It was like watching a movie with the director's commentary turned on, except the director was a bitter, cynical version of myself. See how they don't even bother to say thank you? See how they assume I'll always be there to clean up their messes? They think I'm a doormat. They have no idea. Mark, my ex, was the worst. He'd saunter into my apartment, uninvited as always, raid my fridge, and then launch into a monologue about his amazing life, his brilliant ideas, his endless string of shallow relationships. "So I met this girl at the gym," he said one afternoon, sprawling on my couch, his feet on my coffee table. "Total smoke show, but, she's not exactly stimulating conversation. You were always good at that, Rowan. Listening, I mean." He winked, a condescending, self-satisfied wink. The old Rowan would have blushed, maybe offered a shy smile. This Rowan just laughed, a light, airy laugh that hid the disgust churning in her stomach. "You're so funny, Mark," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm he was too dense to detect. Internally, I was seething. Listening? Is that all I was to you? A sounding board for your ego? Then there was the family dinner. My dad holding court at the head of the table, droning on about his latest golf game. My mom fussing over the food, making sure everyone had enough to eat. Lisa glued to her phone, oblivious to everything around her. "Rowan, dear, can you pass the salt?" my mom asked. "Of course," I said, reaching for the salt shaker. "And be a dear and refill everyone's water glasses," my dad added without looking up from his plate. "Certainly," I responded smoothly. As I went around the table, refilling glasses, I looked at each of them, really looked at them. I saw the complacency in their eyes, the casual disregard, the expectation that I would always be there to cater to their needs. The old Rowan would have felt a pang of resentment, a familiar ache of being unseen. This Rowan felt nothing but cold determination. "Rowan, could you take my car to the car wash?" asked Dad later on. "I just don't have the time this week." "Sure, Dad," I said. "I can do it tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will start selling off everything I don't need, starting with that car," I added to myself. It was all a performance, a charade. But with each passing day, the mask felt less and less like a disguise, and more like a shield. It protected me, hid my true intentions, allowed me to plan my escape without raising any suspicion. They thought they knew me. They thought I was predictable, weak, and easily manipulated. They were wrong. The plan started small, a seed of an idea that quickly took root and grew. I started with my clothes. The things I no longer needed, the things that reminded me of the old Rowan, I sold online. This dress is beautiful. A potential buyer messaged me. Why are you selling it? Just decluttering. I typed back, a small smile playing on my lips. It doesn't fit my style anymore. It was true, in more ways than one. Then came the furniture, the electronics, the countless knickknacks that cluttered my apartment. I listed them on Craigslist, on Facebook Marketplace, holding impromptu yard sales on weekends. Are you moving? A neighbor asked, eyeing the growing pile of items on my lawn. Something like that, I replied, my voice noncommittal. The money started to accumulate. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to start over, enough to disappear. My next step was the bank. I went to my usual branch, the one where I'd been a customer for years. I'd like to close my accounts, I told the teller, a polite, efficient woman named Sarah. All of them? She asked, surprised. May I ask why? I'm relocating, I said, my voice calm and steady. I'll be opening new accounts elsewhere. She processed the paperwork, asking the standard questions, making small talk. I answered everything smoothly, my heart beating a steady rhythm beneath my composed exterior. The money was transferred to a prepaid debit card, untraceable, anonymous. The real challenge was the new identity. I spent hours online, researching, delving into the dark corners of the internet. I learned about creating fake IDs, about assuming new identities, about vanishing without a trace. It was a dangerous game, but I was careful, meticulous. I covered my tracks, used encrypted browsers, public Wi-Fi. I found a website that specialized in creating novelty IDs. They weren't legally valid, of course, but they looked real enough. I ordered one using a fake name, a fake address, a fake date of birth. Anna, I decided I would be Anna, then came the backstory. Anna was a freelance writer, working remotely. She was from a small town in another state, looking for a fresh start. She was quiet, independent, kept to herself. She was, in essence, the opposite of Rowan. I practiced my new persona in the mirror. Hello, my name is Anna, I'd say, trying out different inflections, different mannerisms. I studied my reflection, looking for any trace of the old Rowan, any hint of the pain, the betrayal, the simmering anger. I cut my hair, dyed it a different color, started wearing different clothes. I changed my posture, my gait, even my laugh. I was shedding my old skin, transforming myself into someone new, someone unrecognizable, someone who couldn't be hurt, someone who couldn't be left behind. The day of my departure arrived with a quiet inevitability. I'd planned everything meticulously, leaving no loose ends. I sent a text message to my family group chat and a similar one to a group chat with Chloe, Mark, and a couple of others. Taking some time for myself. Don't worry about me, I'll be in touch when I'm ready. It was vague, ambiguous, just enough to buy me some time. They'd assume I was just being Rowan, needing some space, being sensitive. They wouldn't panic, not yet. I looked around my apartment, now stripped bare of anything personal. It looked like a generic hotel room, devoid of any personality, any history. It was perfect. I picked up my old phone, the one with the cracked screen and the outdated software. I scrolled through my contacts, my photos, my messages. A lifetime of memories reduced to digital dust. With a deep breath, I deleted everything: contacts, photos, messages, apps. Then, I smashed the phone, shattering the screen, rendering it unusable. I did the same with my laptop, wiping the hard drive, destroying the physical components. I placed the broken remnants in a plastic bag along with my old ID, my credit cards, anything that could link me to my past. I'd dispose of them later, far away from here. I picked up my backpack, the only luggage I was taking. It contained my new ID, my prepaid debit card, a few changes of clothes, and a one-way plane ticket to a city far, far away. A city where no one knew me, where I could start over, where I could be Anna. I took one last look around the empty apartment, a strange mixture of sadness and relief washing over me. Goodbye, Rowan, I thought. You deserved better. I walked out the door, closing it softly behind me. I didn't look back. The journey was a blur. A bus to the train station, a train to the airport, a plane to somewhere else. I moved like a ghost, silent, unnoticed, blending into the crowds. I watched the city lights fade beneath me as the plane climbed higher, a sense of exhilaration bubbling up inside me. I was free. I was untethered. I was gone. They wouldn't know where to find me. They wouldn't know who I was. They would search, they would worry, they would eventually despair, but they would never find me. I was the vanishing girl, and they would never recover. It started with a missed phone call, then another, then a text message that went unanswered. Has anyone heard from Rowan? Chloe asked, frowning at her phone. It was a group text, the usual suspects: Mark, Lisa, Sarah, and a couple of other friends from our circle. Not since that weird text she sent, Mark replied, taking some time for myself. Don't worry about me. What did that even mean? She's probably just busy, Lisa chimed in, her voice lacking conviction. You know Rowan, always putting everyone else first, she probably just needs a break. But even Lisa, perpetually optimistic, sounded uneasy. Rowan always answered her phone. Rowan always replied to texts. Rowan always showed up. A week went by, then two. Annoyance turned to concern, and concern began to morph into a low-level panic. I went by her apartment, Sarah said, her voice shaking, during a hastily arranged meeting at our usual coffee shop. It's empty, like completely empty. No furniture, no clothes, nothing. What do you mean, empty? Mark demanded, his usual arrogance replaced by a flicker of fear. I mean empty, Sarah repeated, her eyes wide. I talked to the landlord. He said she gave notice a month ago, paid her rent in full, and just vanished. Chloe stared at her phone, scrolling through Rowan's social media. Her accounts are dead. No posts, no updates, nothing. It's like she's been erased. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken accusations, with the dawning realization that something was terribly wrong. It was my mom who finally broke down. I called her, she sobbed, during a frantic family dinner. A dinner that felt strangely incomplete without Rowan there to organize everything. Her phone, it's disconnected. Her number, it doesn't exist anymore. My dad, usually stoic and unflappable, looked lost. She wouldn't just leave, would she? Without telling us? Lisa, my younger sister, who'd always treated Rowan with a mixture of admiration and teenage indifference, was unusually quiet. She knew. We all knew. We just didn't want to admit it. The small things started to pile up. The unpaid bills, the missed appointments, the forgotten birthdays. Rowan had always been the one who kept track of everything, who held our chaotic lives together. Without her, things started to unravel. Mark, especially, was struggling. He had a major project due at work, a presentation that could make or break his career. He'd always relied on Rowan to help him with these things, to proofread his reports, to organize his ideas, to calm his nerves. Damn it, he exploded one evening, slamming his laptop shut. I can't do this without her. He reached for his phone, his hand hovering over Rowan's contact, a contact that was now useless. He dialed anyway, the call going straight to voicemail, the automated message a cruel reminder of her absence. Rowan, he mumbled, his voice a mixture of frustration and despair. Where the hell are you? He'd never find out. The day of the road trip arrived, a date circled in red on Rowan's calendar, a calendar that no longer existed in a life that no longer belonged to her. They gathered at Mark's apartment, the usual starting point for their adventures. The atmosphere was strained, the usual excitement replaced by a heavy sense of unease. Maybe she'll show up, Chloe said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. Maybe she just lost track of time. No one believed her. Mark paced back and forth, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. I tried calling her again, he said, his voice tight. Nothing. It's like she's fallen off the face of the earth. My parents arrived, their faces etched with worry. Have you heard anything? My mom asked, her voice trembling. Nothing, Mark repeated. Nothing at all. The argument escalated, fueled by guilt, fear, and the growing realization that they'd done something unforgivable. They blamed each other, they blamed Rowan, they blamed everyone but themselves. The road trip was canceled. There was no celebration, no laughter, no excitement. Just a heavy, suffocating silence, punctuated by recriminations and regrets. They decided to take action. They contacted the police, filing a missing person report. They described Rowan, her last known location, the circumstances of her disappearance. The police listened, took notes, promised to investigate, but they offered little hope. They searched her apartment, the empty, echoing space, a stark reminder of her absence. They found nothing, no note, no clues, no indication of where she'd gone or why. They talked to her neighbors, her coworkers, her few acquaintances. No one had seen her. No one knew anything. Rowan had vanished without a trace. She'd become a ghost, a phantom, a haunting reminder of their own cruelty. Months passed. The initial panic subsided, replaced by a dull, persistent ache. Rowan's absence had become a permanent fixture in their lives, a void that could never be filled. Sarah started drinking heavily. She'd always been a social drinker, but now it was different. It was an escape, a way to numb the guilt that gnawed at her conscience. "I can't stop thinking about her," she confessed to Chloe one night, her voice slurred with alcohol. "About what we did. About how we left her." "It was a mistake, Sarah," Chloe said, trying to sound reassuring, but her own voice was shaky. "We didn't mean for it to happen." "But it did happen," Sarah insisted, tears streaming down her face, "and we can't take it back. We can't undo it." Mark's career imploded. He missed deadline after deadline, his work sloppy and unfocused. He'd always relied on Rowan to keep him on track, to organize his chaotic life. Without her, he was lost. He was fired. His boss, a man who'd once praised his potential, delivered the news with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. "You had everything going for you, Mark. But you threw it all away. You let your personal life, or whatever the hell is going on with you, destroy your career." Mark just stared at him, numb, unable to respond. He'd lost his job, his girlfriend, the smoke show had dumped him weeks ago. And now, he'd lost even the memory of Rowan as someone to be annoyed by. He'd lost the person who had unacknowledged held his life together. My family was falling apart. My parents, once pillars of strength, were now shadows of their former selves. They argued constantly, blaming each other and blaming themselves. "We should have been better parents," my mom sobbed one evening, clutching a photo of Rowan, a photo from a time when we were all happy, or at least pretended to be. "We took her for granted," my dad said, his voice heavy with regret. "We always expected her to be there, to clean up our messes, to fix our problems. And now, she's gone." Lisa, my younger sister, had changed the most. She'd become withdrawn, quiet, haunted by the memory of her sister, the sister she'd often treated with indifference. "I miss her, Mom," she whispered one night, her voice barely audible. "I miss Rowan." They were all unraveling, each in their own way. The people who had left Rowan at a gas station were now the ones who were truly abandoned. Their lives, once filled with careless laughter and thoughtless cruelty, were now empty, hollow, haunted by the ghost of the girl they'd left behind. And they were beginning to understand that they would never, ever recover. It was a year to the day since they'd left me at that god-forsaken gas station. I imagined them gathered together, probably at my parents' house, the air thick with unspoken guilt and recriminations. They'd probably light a candle, maybe say a few awkward words, pretending to mourn the loss of me. The hypocrisy of it made me smile. They were gathered, as I'd predicted. My parents had insisted on a remembrance dinner, a morbid attempt to atone for their sins. Mark was there, looking even more haggard than I'd imagined. Chloe, her usual bubbly facade cracked and faded. Lisa, my sister, her eyes red-rimmed and haunted. Sarah, who I'd heard had taken to the bottle pretty hard, was conspicuously absent. The atmosphere was strained, to say the least. No one was eating, no one was really talking. Just a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the clinking of silverware and the occasional stifled sob. Then, it happened. The ping of an incoming email. My mom was checking her phone, probably hoping for a distraction, anything to break the tension. "Who's that from?" my dad asked, his voice weary. My mom's face went pale. She stared at the screen, her hand trembling. I don't know," she whispered. "It's an unfamiliar address." The subject line was simple, but it landed like a punch to the gut. "Remember me?" Curiosity, and perhaps a sliver of desperate hope, overcame their fear. My mom opened the email. It was just one sentence, a single, perfectly crafted sentence designed to shatter whatever fragile piece they'd managed to find. Funny, isn't it? How it feels to be left behind. They all leaned in, staring at the screen, their faces a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. The words hung in the air, a silent accusation. Then they saw the attachment. A photo. It was me, but not the Rowan they remembered. This Rowan was different. My hair was longer, a different color, styled in a way I'd never worn it before. I was wearing a simple white dress, standing on a beach, the turquoise water sparkling behind me. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow on my skin. But it wasn't just my appearance that had changed, it was my expression. I was smiling. Not the polite, accommodating smile of the old Rowan, but a genuine, radiant smile that reached my eyes. A smile that said, I'm free. The silence in the room shattered. That's Rowan, Lisa gasped, her voice choked with emotion. But how? Chloe stammered, her eyes wide with disbelief. She's alive? My dad whispered, his voice trembling. Mark, who'd been silent until now, let out a strangled cry. It's a fake. It has to be. But they knew, they all knew. It was me. And I was gone. The weight of their actions, the full force of their betrayal, crashed down on them. They'd left me for dead. They'd assumed I was weak, helpless, that I'd come crawling back. They'd been so wrong. The photo was a message, a final devastating blow. I was alive, I was thriving, and I was completely, utterly beyond their reach. They were the ones left behind now, and they would never recover. The immediate aftermath was chaos. They tried everything. Reply to the email? It bounced back, undeliverable. Trace the IP address? A dead end, a public Wi-Fi hotspot in a city thousands of miles away. We have to find her, my mom insisted, her voice frantic. We have to tell her. We have to apologize. Apologize? Mark scoffed, his voice bitter. For what? For a stupid joke that went too far? She's the one who disappeared, who cut us all out of her life. She wouldn't have done it if we hadn't, Lisa started, but her voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. They contacted the police again, showing them the email, the photo. The police were sympathetic, but there was nothing they could do. Rowan, or rather Anna, hadn't broken any laws. She was an adult, free to live wherever she wanted, under whatever name she chose. They hired a private investigator, a gruff, cynical man who promised results, but delivered only more frustration. He tracked down the location of the photo, a small coastal town in a foreign country, but Rowan was long gone. She's a ghost, the investigator said, shrugging his shoulders. She doesn't want to be found. One by one, they began to unravel. Mark, already jobless and depressed, spiraled further into self-destruction. He blamed Rowan for his failures, clinging to the delusion that she'd somehow orchestrated his downfall. Chloe, stripped of her usual support system, became increasingly erratic, her bubbly personality replaced by a brittle, anxious fragility. Sarah, consumed by guilt, continued to drink, her life a blur of hangovers and regrets. My parents, the pillars of our family, crumbled under the weight of their guilt and remorse. They'd lost their daughter, not to death, but to their own callousness. Lisa, the youngest, was perhaps the most affected. She'd looked up to Rowan, admired her strength, her resilience. Now she saw her sister as a symbol of everything she herself lacked: the courage to break free, the will to forge her own path. They were all haunted by the same question. Why? Why had Rowan done this? Why had she vanished without a trace? Why had she chosen this elaborate, devastating revenge? They would never know the full story. They would never understand the depth of my pain, the cold, hard fury that had driven me. They would never grasp the simple truth that sometimes the worst punishment isn't what you do to people, it's what you take away. And I had taken away everything: their peace of mind, their sense of security, their belief in their own goodness. I had taken away their daughter, their friend, their safety net. And I had replaced it with a void, a gaping hole in their lives that would never be filled. The air here smells like salt and freedom. My small cottage overlooks the ocean, a view that still takes my breath away even after all these months. I've built a life here, a quiet, peaceful life, far removed from the chaos and cruelty of my past. My name is Anna now. It's a simple name, a common name, a name that carries no baggage, no history. It's a blank slate, a new beginning. I work as a freelance writer, just as I'd planned. I write articles, blog posts, website content, anything that allows me to work from home, to be my own boss, to control my own destiny. I've made a few friends, locals who know me only as Anna, the quiet American writer who loves the ocean. They don't know about Rowan, about the life I left behind, about the revenge I enacted. And they never will. And sometimes I think about them, my family, my friends. I wonder if they're still searching, still haunted, still wondering why. I wonder if they've learned anything, if they've changed. But I don't dwell on it. There's no anger, no bitterness, no lingering resentment. Just a quiet satisfaction. I did what I had to do. I survived, and I thrived. I walk on the beach every morning watching the sunrise, feeling the sand between my toes, the wind in my hair. The ocean is a constant reminder of the vastness of the world, of the endless possibilities that lie ahead. I am free. Free from the expectations, the obligations, the suffocating weight of my old life. Free from the people who took me for granted, who treated me like I was invisible. They wanted me to disappear. Well, I did. But on my own terms. And in my own way. I am Rowan no more. I am Anna, and I am reborn. The sun climbs higher in the sky, casting a golden glow on the water. I close my eyes, breathing in the salty air, feeling the warmth on my skin. This is my life now, and it's a good life. They may never recover. They may spend the rest of their days searching for answers, for closure, for forgiveness, but they won't find it, because the person they're looking for no longer exists. And as for me, I'm not looking back. I'm moving forward. One step at a time, one sunrise at a time, one wave at a time. The future is uncertain, of course. New challenges will arise, new obstacles will appear, but I'm not afraid. I've faced the darkness, and I've emerged stronger, more resilient, more determined than ever. I am the architect of my own destiny, and my journey is just beginning.